Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Foreign Master. And yeah, another overly sarcastic productions reaction, yay. History summarized, Malta, an empire in miniature. So I have to be completely honest here. The vast majority of my knowledge on Malta comes from World War II, and the fact that it was fairly important to fighting Italian air and just, you know, projecting British air power into the Mediterranean. Other than that, I don't actually know that much about them. Actually, wait, is Malta still controlled by the British, or is it its own thing now? Malta was a crown colony from 1814 until 1964, when it was granted independence and joined the British Commonwealth. Oh, okay then, it is independent. The more you know. So yeah, I don't actually know that much about Malta, though given that it's in the Mediterranean, I would suspect that through a lot of history, it might have been very important to trade. Other than that, I want to get into this then. So yeah, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will be linking to whatever my Let's Play of the day is. And yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
In the summer of 1565, Malta became the most beloved island in the Christian world, and the Ottoman Empire was furious about it. See, back in 1522, the Crusader Knights of St. John got violently evicted from their home in Rhodes by the Ottomans, and after taking up shop on the tiny Maltese archipelago, the Knights got ready for the inevitable round two. However, in a shock to the Ottomans and all of Christian Europe, the Knights held out, withstanding this great siege of Malta and halting the once unstoppable Ottoman advance across the Mediterranean. This tiny rock proved to be a colossal pain in the ass, and so became the pride and joy of every king in Europe. In the decades following, these grateful rulers lavished treasures on Malta, and thanks for them seemingly saving the world, and as a result, the Knights of St. John had the literal golden opportunity to turn their new home into an impervious seaborne palace, a fortress of opulence, an island empire. I mean, look, the place is pretty, okay? So to show you how Malta's grandeur grew to meet the weighty reputation of the Great Siege and become an empire in miniature, let's do some history.
Well, okay, then I didn't know that. That's cool.
Once the Ottoman cannons piped down and the siege was finally over, priority one was building. The main bombardment was in and around the Grand Harbor, where the Knights' capital of Birgu suffered heavy damage and several of their forts got overrun and battered. Grand Master and hero of the siege, Jean de la Valette, thought a new capital was in order, but rather than move to the ancient capital of Imdina way inland, he stuck to the harbor and picked the central Chiberis Peninsula as the site of the Knights' new city, La Valletta. The city was designed by the Pope's own military architect with a grid plan
plans are back, baby, yay!
Fort St. Elmo. The original fort was captured in the siege and clearly needed an upgrade, so the Knights piled up loads of finely cut Maltese limestone to fortify the peninsula. After many pleas and thank yous to the kings and princes of Europe who financed Malta's new HQ, Valletta was declared the capital in 1571. Over the following centuries, the Knights steadily upgraded St. Elmo to keep up with the latest in gunpowder defenses, and they also added more forts around the harbor, fortified the Cittadella on the northern island of Gozo, as well as the old city of Imdina, and built a network of 6 coastal watchtowers in the 1610s.
Always gotta love star forts.
With enough limestone fortifications to make an Ottoman admiral faint, Malta became a triple-layer citadel with Valletta as the central keep within the harbor and the island at large. These fortifications were never directly tested in battle, but as a deterrent, the warning to the Ottomans was clear. Malta was impossible to take before we built all this extra bullshit, so good goddamn luck trying to take it now.
Oh, gotta love it.
Our boys the Knights were crusaders after all, it makes sense that an early priority was churches, and as Valletta took shape, they did not dally. Grandmaster La Valette founded Our Lady of Victory as the city's first church just a year after the siege, and in the 1570s, the Knights built the conventual Church of St. John as the centerpiece convent of their order's patron saint. Today we know it is St. John's Co-Cathedral, but that wasn't until the 1820s,
Co-Cathedral?
so shh, forget about it, it's fine.
Oh, okay.
The church, like everything else in Malta, is built from the local limestone in a style that's big but not overtly showy, so it fits nicely with the rest of the city. The real aesthetic and thematic heft is inside, as the interior decoration makes abundantly clear just how thankful Europe was for the Knights' service in the siege. With gold...
Oh, God. I mean, stuff like this. I mean, just... And you know every single square inch of that is all handcrafted, hand painted. Oh, it's so beautiful. I mean, if I ever end up going back to Europe, after I go back to Lithuania, I definitely want to go to places like this in Malta, just seeing these beautiful cathedrals, because we don't have that sort of stuff here. At least not as good, authentic, I don't know what the right word to be, but that is just beautiful. Very shiny too.
On fresco, on gold, on marble, on gold, on gold,
Lots
on
of gold.
Beyond the giant Caravaggio painting of St. John's beheading, there's a mountain of iconography relating the history of the knights and the various corners of Europe they came from. Rather than divide by country, the order was comprised of 8 tongues, or langues in French, reflecting the major ethno-linguistic identities of Europe at the time. Auvergne, France, Provence, Castile, Aragon, Italy, Germany, and England. Each langue has its own chapel in St. John's, and these 8 also symbolize the 8 points on the order's fancy cross. All this universalizes the Knights in a pan-European Christianity, which makes sense given their origins as Crusader doctors in the Holy Land.
Confused proto-EU noises extremely blurs. Please help. Come on, it's not that bad. You gotta love it. It's stuff like this where you can get people to really like stay together and, you know, not fight, because especially back then, even though there was the giant infidel wouldn't be the right word, but you know, the Ottoman Empire on the doorstep. The countries of Europe were still fighting against each other.
That legacy of international Christian cooperation stuck around. Most knights could point to somewhere else they were from via their langue, so if the knights weren't from Malta, Malta could then be from everywhere. The structure of the order lent Malta a Catholic universality, as well as a very helpful in with all the royal courts of Europe. Thematic architecture is expensive. Now, each langue had an administrative and social headquarters called an auberge, or inn. The knights originally built their auberges in the city of Birgu once they arrived in 1530, and then built new ones in Valletta after the siege. All this work in the 1500s follows what's called the Mannerist style. Then 3 auberges and several churches received a distinct facelift in the 16 and 1700s in the subsequent Baroque style. What's the difference between the two? Well, the terminology is far more troublesome than it's worth. In the past, I've taken a shortcut and described the Renaissance architectural style as neoclassical, as it's born from a rediscovery of ancient Greek and Roman ideas, but strictly speaking, that is not actually neoclassical, because that term refers exclusively to the neoclassical movement of the mid-17 and 1800s, characterized as a return to the simplicity of actual classical architecture in contrast to the elaborate swooshy opulence of Baroque. I understand the academic point of confining the term neoclassical to one specific era, I just fully disagree with it,
and yet you're purposefully making it more complicated on yourself. I mean...
I use it as an umbrella term for the Renaissance family of architectures. To that end, all Maltese architecture since the Knights is some form of neoclassical, but within that, Mannerist is an unhelpfully undescriptive term.
Yeah, I've never heard of Mannerist
will struggle
before.
to fit cleanly along a timeline, but Mannerism really loses me. This architecture does play a little with classical elements, but nothing here is that different from earlier Renaissance works in Italy. With Maltese Baroque, we see more bold shapes, more depth, more flair, more size, so it's helpful to call the style by a new name, but Mannerism to me is just Renaissance before Baroque. I'm sorry for the Mannerism erasure, but I can't. I'm sorry, this term just makes no sense to me.
If I could get back here. So he said that this was Mannerist, and I mean, that almost looks, I'm not gonna say modern, I'm trying to, like, almost like, no, not Art Deco, obviously, but it's that sort of plain, like, it's sort of like slightly more ornate brutalist architecture. The way I'm almost seeing this is, it's almost like a brutalist architecture, but it has like the ornate, stuff added onto it, like the well-carved handrail, the pillars, the stuff on the corners, instead of just being pure squares. And of course, it's made out of, bricks and blocks and stuff instead of concrete. But like, that's almost what I'm almost seeing with it. It's sort of like very plain, a lot of squares from what I'm seeing. But I'm just trying to get Mannerist. Obviously a manor is like a big house, almost not a mansion. I'm definitely gonna have to look that up. Like, where did the term Mannerist actually come from? Now I'm curious.
Baroque. I'm sorry for the mannerism erasure, but I can't. I'm sorry. This term just makes no sense to me.
Mannerism,
In
sorry.
that vein, many Maltese buildings started out Mannerist but got renovated in centuries after to fit the contemporary Baroque style. Whether that's retrofitting a shiny new interior, such as the Grand Master's Palace, or altering the whole face of the building, as was the case for the 3 Baroque auberges of Provence, Italy, and Castile. That last one especially is Mondo fancy, as it got rebuilt entirely in the 1740s. And several other buildings across Malta needed the redo after a massive Sicilian earthquake in 1693, which takes us to the old city of Mdina. After the knights arrived, the old Maltese aristocracy kept largely to themselves inland, while those wily boys were out by the Grand Harbor, and the city maintained the Norman Sicilian medieval architecture it had for centuries. But after the earthquake wrecked large parts of the city and damaged the Norman-era Cathedral of St. Paul, the knights saw that they had room to play and wasted no time building over the ruins, making new city gates, a new Palazzo Vilhena, new bank and courthouse, and a new centerpiece Cathedral of St. Paul, all built on the sites of older buildings that didn't super belong to the knights, but all, of course, in gorgeous Baroque. And I really can't be that surprised. Once a crusader, always a crusader. Back in Valletta, new Baroque works bubbled up from the city with fancy arches, civic buildings, and plenty of churches. Crusaders, man.
Yeah.
I tell ya. By the end of the 1700s, tiny little Malta could compete with Europe's grandest capitals, and rare few could boast the raw aesthetic cohesion of a city made of purely local limestone. It's like the city was either carved out of the peninsula or burst up out of the ground fully formed, and damn, that is a look. But at the turn of the 1800s, Malta changed hands as the knights got booted by Napoleon, who in turn got booted by Britain, who held Malta as a colony until its independence in 1964. In this century and a half, the big style import was a Victorian-era taste for capital and neoclassical, which is to say, trying to accurately emulate the stately feel of Greek and Roman architecture. The British renovated the main guard building with a neoclassical portico, added a mini Greek temple as a monument in the lower Barraca Gardens, built an Anglican cathedral for St. Paul in the style of a big temple, and made another temple like Garrison Chapel for the Royal Navy boys. All told, just a few additions, but having stumbled onto each of them myself while visiting Malta, they really sell the feeling of being in an ancient Greek city. Even when Malta was part of someone else's empire, their visual identity only became more uniquely striking than before. Impressive. One trait they did share with Britain, however, was getting bombed to bits in World War II. The Second Siege of Malta left many historic buildings in ruins, needing heavy repairs or outright replacement in the decades after.
I just love the thought of that. The first siege was from the Ottomans, they couldn't get in, and then the second siege was World War II.
Of the works done after the war, one of the most dramatic is the Basilica of Our Lady of Mount Carmel with its ginormo dome, so now at last the city is complete. The other is a trio
always gotta love the dome.
Renzo Piano, lending a vividly modern city gate, Parliament House, and Royal Opera House in the 2010s. The Maltese limestone keeps them cohesive with the rest of the city, while their open design brings the welcoming feeling of a civic plaza. Malta became a republic in 1974, but I think this thematic statement makes it all click. A modern yet very Maltese Parliament Square for a modern republic. Malta is as much of an architectural anomaly as it is a historical one. What I find so compelling is the sense of universality that's infused in every block of limestone. The knights represented a pan-European Catholicism that took physical form in their iconography, artwork, and capital city. Valletta's whole being is unified by stone, so the monumental architecture rising out of it is just a bonus, and the styling of all that work in ancient Greek and Roman aesthetics is a bonus to me in particular. Malta is the classics in miniature, Catholicism in miniature, the British Empire in miniature, and it shows all of them magnificently. It's a singular example of how opulent form and grand ideology can combine into something stunningly greater than each on its own. Not just an imperial capital without an empire, La Valletta is the empire. Thank you all for watching.
Beautiful. There are so many places in the world I want to go to before I die, and it's like that is definitely one of them because it's just so beautiful and as he said, unique. I mean, the whole the limestone. I mean, what else can I say besides that's beautiful? It's awesome, and of course, it's always the Nazis that destroy everything. I guess original is in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will be linking to my newest Let's Play of the day. And yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.